From Joe commenting on the fight between Volkanovski and Rodriguez, to Chael Sonnen's opinions sounding suspiciously like the podcasters, Joe Rogan shares his predictions for UFC 290. Being with the UFC franchise for almost 3 decades now, Joe Rogan's seen as a UFC god. His comments on fights and the way he covers big events has helped him build a bond with fans, and he loves to share his thoughts and predictions on fights and his favorites in UFC 290. So let's start with him talking about the fight between Volkanovski and Rodriguez. The main card on the early morning of July 9th, 2023 is the one for the featherweight title. On one end, we have the Great, aka Alexander Volkanovski, standing at 154 pounds with a record of 25 wins, 2 draws, and 0 losses. He's the current featherweight champion of the world and an absolute beast of a man. On the other end, we have El Pantera, or the Panther, aka Yair, standing at 145 pounds with a record of 16 wins, 3 draws, and no losses. Not only that, but he's also #1 in the featherweight category currently, fighting to snatch that title away from Volkanovski, and the man has set his goals. When it comes to Joe Rogan, I gotta say he's already picked his winner, talking about it on his fantastic podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience. He said that he's a big fan of the Panthers' fighting style and his highlight finishes. Talking to others on the show, he said Rodriguez is one of the wildest fighters in the MMA. He has some of those unimaginable kicks because of his Taekwondo background, mentioning how he pinned down BJ Penn. While at it, Joe also pulled up several videos of Yair, showing others exactly what the fighter is capable of, saying that he's dynamic, has great striking ability, and is wicked in the octagon. I agree with him, because if you look at some of the moves this guy pulls off, you have to keep looking because it all happens in the blink of an eye. The co-main event of UFC 290 is also a must-look, with Brandon Moreno being pitted against Alexander Pantoja. Moreno, aka the Assassin Baby, is the current UFC flyweight champion and has made a name for himself as one of the top fighters in the division, possessing excellent technical skills, a well-rounded skill set, and a never-ending supply of determination. His recent victory over Davison Figueiredo for the title was a true display of his toughness and ability to adapt to his opponent's style. He was so good that even Rogan congratulated him, saying his performance cemented his legacy and development. Fans were impressed with this statement by Joe and took to Twitter, insisting that the host should call Moreno on his podcast. With a solid grappling background and improving striking, the fighter can set the pace and control the fight, giving him a competitive advantage. There's no doubt that Alexandra Pantoja is a challenging rival who has flexed his skills and determination in the flyweight division, having powerful striking abilities, notable knockout power, and a relentless offensive approach. He told Rogan that he was going to be the next flyweight champion. His experience and overall fight IQ make him a dangerous opponent for anyone, and on top of that, his solid defense and ability to scramble on the ground could pose a challenge for Moreno's grappling-heavy style. The outcome of this fight will depend on the fighters' ability to impose their game plans and play to their strengths. Fans can expect an intense and insane battle between the two flyweights, making it a must-watch contest at UFC 290. Speaking of the fighters, did you know it's Robbie Lawler's last fight with the UFC? One of the greatest talents of the UFC, Lawler, aka Ruthless, has decided to part ways, with him calling it a career-ending fight with Nico Price at the UFC 290. It's a sad day for the sport. UFC president Dana White was the first to announce this, saying that Lawler's name will be put into the UFC Hall of Fame, where it belongs. He said that he found Robbie when he was only 19 years old and has stood in the octagon for 22 years, displaying nothing but hard work and bringing only his best. You guys might be wondering, what greatness is he talking about? Well, his fight with Rory McDonald is considered to be one of the best fights of UFC history, and the amount of willpower and determination he put in to defend the title gives me goosebumps. Lawler's greatness stems from his relentless fighting style, knockout power, and his ability to engage in unforgettable wars inside the octagon. His ability to stand through it all and his exciting performances have not only made him a fan favorite, it's also made him a respected figure in the sport of mixed martial arts. Next on Rogan's list are his favorite fighters in the UFC 290. Another fight card of the event is between Robert Whittaker and Dricus du Plessis, with Whittaker ranked #2 in the middleweight category and Dricus at #5. This is a fight to decide who gets the first loss of their career. Joe has picked Robert, aka the Reaper, as his favorable fighter, saying that he's the perfect size, not too huge and not too small, has awesome cardio, and can knock out anyone. Mentioning one of his previous title fight, Rogan also said that Whittaker is an animal who almost fought with a twisted bowel and intestinal hernia. Now, I get why he's Rogan's favorite. This guy has magical willpower. One of the fights in the UFC 290 is between some promising newbies. Bo Nickel with 4 wins, 0 draws, and 0 losses, against Treason Gore with 5 wins, 2 draws, and 0 losses, and Rogan has picked Bo Nickel as his choice. Talking about the newbie on on his podcast with Jorge Masvidal, an MMA artist, he said that Bo had elite wrestling skills at such a young age, and that it is the base of his fighting style. He mentioned that the fighter had maybe 5 minutes of combat total in his 4 fights because that's how fast he is, and he's committed to making his mark. Talking about fighters, Royval believes that tooting his own horn is going to do wonders for his career. UFC flyweight contender Brandon Royval has been chosen as the backup fighter in the co-main event of the UFC 290 between Moreno and Pantoja. This has made him realize that he's walking proof of self-promotion. This realization is not him bragging, though. He has earned it, having lost only to the co-main contenders and currently on a 3-fight winning streak. This guy is a perfect backup plan. He said that calling shots on your own is the way ahead in MMA, and he can make any call out he wants because of his reputation in the division. These are some tall statements coming from the short man. He went on to say that regardless of his fighting, he will get paid at the weigh-in, and if any situation were to arise where one fighter forfeits, he said that he won't be reluctant to ask what he deserves, especially when he's come to save face for the UFC. In the end, he had one more thing to say, that he's been fighting only the top contenders in his entire UFC career, and for that, even though the UFC has compensated him, he still believes that he is underpaid, and given a chance, he'll surely go in for the kill. While we're on the topic of what others are saying, one individual had his say on a certain fight in the UFC 290. One of the ex-fighters of UFC, Chael Sonnen, middleweight and light heavyweight title contender, has expressed his displeasure on one of the fight cards, the one between Whitaker and Duplessis. He took to his YouTube channel and asked everyone what they were even doing, matching up this kind of fight. He insisted that it was not too late yet, saying that Israel Adesanya is the obvious next fighter for Stillknox, aka Duplessis. I mean, we can at least consider it, since it's coming from a veteran of the game, and I think that Joe would agree. He also said that the last stylebender, aka Israel Adesanya, says he won't fight anyone until he fights Duplessis, not caring about the fact whether he can or cannot beat Robert. And he didn't stop there. He said that Adesanya predicts Whitaker will beat him, and even if it is an embarrassing knockout loss, he wishes to fight him next. Whoa, this guy has another level of hate for Duplessis, and that too isn't without reason.
185 for the champion, Robert Whitaker!
Israel and Stillknox have gone at it before, and frankly, it's because of Duplessis' remarks, saying that he and others like him are the only African fighters in the UFC, dismissing all others, including the stylebender. He's eager to show him again exactly what a fellow African will do to him in the octagon. From Chael Sonnen's opinions, that sounds suspiciously like the podcasters.
Just the length on his kicks. Obviously, we know each other, but just the length on his kicks and, you know what I'm saying? Just super quick.
To Joe commenting on the fight between Alexander Volkanovski and Yair Rodriguez. That was all on Joe Rogan's predictions for UFC 290.